In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how and why postmodernism is the cause of much of our modern depression, anxiety, and suffering. And so you may be a postmodernist and you may not even know it. So I would ask my students, how many of you are postmodernists for years? No one's hand ever went in the air until I started digging into the assumptions. And I would ask one assumption after another. Slowly hands would rise. And in the end, it turned out most of them were postmodernists. They just didn't know it. Now, it's a very difficult, self-contradictory, confusing philosophy, but I'm going to do my best to give you the basics. Two fundamental assumptions. The first is that there's only one truth, and that is that there are no truths. And you can ponder on that one. Now, usually the right brain enjoys a paradox, but I'm going to show you why it doesn't in this case. The second is that if there's anything to reality, it is constructed and maintained by language. And so language is a great example of an abstraction. You say the word water, and of course, it's just this, meaningless sound in the air, but we give it meaning because it's a pointer to something in the real world. And we know that it doesn't matter which language you use, it's not the sound, it's the underlying thing in reality that actually you can drink. And so what we find in postmodernism is what's happened over the last 2 years, in fact, is a slow replacing of genuine reality with one abstraction of another. And so two examples of this, and it's the only examples I could find of people who have picked up on this outside of the stuff I do on this channel. And Alfred North Whitehead, he called this the error of misplaced concreteness. And that's when we take an abstraction and we misplace it as something that's in the concrete, real physical world. And William James, he called this vicious abstractionism. And he said that this is the greatest intellectual sin of our times. And he didn't live to see the Second World War or all the horrific things humans did to each other in the name of misplacing these abstractions as something that belongs in real physical reality. And so language seems to be the only reality. So how does that cause anxiety? Well, again, I've done videos on the research, so I'm just going to give a short explanation here, but we do know that we mind wander about half of our day. Most of that is in the form of inner speech. And we also know that most intrusive thoughts come in the form of inner speech, and we know that these intrusive thoughts cause anxiety and depression. And it's because people are taking them seriously. So we know that the people who take these thoughts the most serious are the ones that suffer from them the most. Well, that's totally in line with postmodernism, because postmodernism is saying right out, if there's any reality out there, which there isn't, but if there were, it would be language-based. This is as opposite as you could possibly get from Eastern philosophy, which absolutely knew that you are not the voice in the head. In fact, you should become the observer of the voice in the head and not take any of that stuff too seriously. And so and cognitive therapy does the same thing. It's all about not taking your thoughts and these abstractions very seriously, because in the end, the voice in the head, the thinking mind, is a survival tool. So it's bent on paranoia, and it's only to get us by with survival. So it was never meant to be 100% accurate. And so many of our thoughts are wrong and misleading and an absolutely horrific GPS to reality. And yet postmodernism is saying they're the only thing we've got that's close to reality, if there is such a thing. Let me just give you a short version of Ian Mcgillcrest, his whole take on the left and right sides of the brain and postmodernism. It fits in with this. He said, and there's, again, tons of research, 800-page book, a lot of it on this topic. The left brain craves consistency, coherency, and what is known. And the right brain craves the exact opposite. It delights in the unknown, the mysteries of what isn't explained or understood. And so the fascination we have with music, just, not knowing what's going to happen is a sense of great joy for us. But the left brain comes along and one-ups the right brain. And what it says is the one thing I can be certain of is that you can be certain of nothing. And it does that same kind of trick. So it has a way of one-upping and taking the mystery out of some of these right brain activities. Well, let's look at some quotes here because, again, let's get a little deeper into postmodernism. And sometimes it's just good to draw from them, the postmodernists themselves. So Derrida said, there is nothing outside of the text. Well, it's about as blatant as you can get to saying that there is nothing, there's no reality behind the words. And I rarely get creeped out, but this one feels very creepy to me. Derrida said, I always dream of a pen that would be a syringe. And in that sense, it almost feels like the reality of my thoughts, if I could just inject them into other people. This is Hodgkin. I don't know if he's a postmodernist. I can't remember. I mean, I think he was just writing about postmodernism. And he said, to the postmodernist eye, truth is not out there waiting to be revealed, but is something that is constructed by people. So truth is constructed by people. And what we find there is a blatant example of the left brain's interpretive capacities, its storytelling capacities, and mistaking those abstract stories for reality itself. Now, in the East, we find the complete opposite of this. The East philosophies, Taoism, Hinduism, they knew absolutely that a finger pointing to the moon is not the moon. They knew that the Tao that could be named was not the true Tao, and they knew that you are not your mind. And so Ramana Maharshi or Nisargadatta, if you wanted to summarize both of their philosophies, what they said over and over again is that you are not your mind. Don't worry about your mind because it's not who you are. Because if you were your mind, that you would be that monkey mind, continuous, endless chatter. Now, what we find over the last few generations is, again, the shift from taking language not very seriously to believing language is reality. So you see this, and you may have heard the expression probably from like 1 or 2 generations ago. They would say, words can never hurt you. Sticks and stones may break your bones, but words can never harm you. And so that reflects the earlier version where language was a symbol and it wasn't reality itself. Now, particularly if we go to the universities, which is the absolute mothership of postmodernism and abstractionism, there's been a kind of what you might call war on words, where language is policed. Now, that makes perfect sense if you're a postmodernist, because if postmodernism and language define reality, well, you better be extremely careful, because you're creating worlds when you speak. And again, in the East, we see such a contrast in this philosophy, because your true joy, your inner peace, come from disidentifying with the language centers. I mean, what are you doing when you do mindfulness? What are you doing when you do meditation? I mean, if you're doing yoga and you're identifying with the inner monkey mind, you're not doing yoga at all. And to do yoga is to be in your body, to consciously experience reality rather than thinking about it. In postmodernism, there is no reality. There's only our thinking about it. So the sin of postmodernism is that it hands over reality over to the troublemaking monkey mind. And then it declares death on the very source of our peace, actual reality itself.